Okay, that's good. All right, we're recording.
Yes.
Okay, go.
That was it. That's the podcast. Thank you.
Wow.
I wish they could have seen you scurry off around the corner. Welcome back to A Light in the Dark. I am one of your hosts, Matt.
And I'm Keegan.
Yes, sir. And we are, as you can see, there's a very handsome, beautiful haired man
Thank you.
to our left. This is our good friend and our special guest, Ethan.
Wow. I feel honored. Thank you. I don't know why I'm clapping for this,
Yeah,
but
clap for
I
it.
feel honored. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. So we were blessed to meet Ethan in our first week in SF. Keegan and Ethan exchanged phone numbers at a conference that we were at a local church, and ever since then it's been amazing. I gotta be honest, you've been able to teach me a lot about Christianity and just, yeah, I mean, Ethan's been like kind of me and Keegan's disciple. Is that what you would call it?
I think it'd be the other way.
Yeah.
You guys are technically my disciples.
Yeah.
I see. I'm still learning. That's,
Hey,
that's what I need.
hey,
That's what I need
it's
him
okay.
for.
It's
That's what I
okay.
need him for.
We're all disciples of Jesus.
Okay,
so-
there we go. So yeah, Ethan's been super helpful with just like I said, helping us learn, and we're very grateful for you, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So today we are super excited. We are going to have Ethan share his testimony. It's amazing testimony. Did you want to say anything before?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I remember that first week after we had exchanged numbers, we got coffee, and you shared a little bit about your testimony, but I feel like there's so many nuances with sharing a testimony, and
Yeah,
it was
right.
kind of, you gave me the lowdown,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
really
yeah.
excited to dive deep
Mhm.
and just learn more about your story.
Yeah.
But do you want to give yourself a little introduction and kind of jump right in?
Yeah. I'm Ethan. I am 20 years old. I've been walking with the Lord for about 5.5 years now. I work for a ministry called Crazy Love. I'm also the, I guess you would say, producer for this. I don't know if that's the right
Producer,
word?
editor,
The list.
collaborator.
Go with the list, go with the list.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
what
too
did we
much,
write
too
down?
much. Yeah. But I do all the behind the scenes stuff for the podcast, and I mean, it's been super fun, honestly. It's been great just doing this, and I've lived in San Francisco now for about almost getting close to 2 years now, about 1.5 years.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's been just a great ride.
Yeah, so I feel like let's jump right in. I mean, how does your testimony start?
Yeah. I'll start way at the beginning because I know for my story, it's important to have some context. So before I was born, my mom, she got pregnant at 19 with me. And it's interesting because as I learned this just a few years ago, but my mom and my dad both were on drugs. They were smoking weed, crazy stuff. But my mom thought she couldn't get pregnant because she was like drinking so much and taking so many drugs. And she thought she couldn't get pregnant. And then lo and behold, she found out she had me, and she told me my dad was not very pleased. I mean, I can't even imagine being 19 and finding out that you're gonna have a kid. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. And so yeah, so he wasn't in the picture, unfortunately, but so that's sort of the context. My mom grew up Christian, but she had just kind of strayed away from the Lord. And then I was born, and it was really a miracle that I was even born, honestly, because when you're young, you don't know what you're supposed to do, and she had lots of people telling her lots of different things, including abortion, including adoption, and so those were both on the table for me. Like, the fact that I'm even here right now is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
In San Francisco, yeah, like super blessed. Just the Lord has really, he's like fought for me.
That's amazing.
Fought for my life, which has been just, a blessing for sure. But yeah, growing up, I have a list here that I want to make sure I hit all my points.
I like that.
Yeah, so growing up, just me and my mom, my grandparents were around. It was nice because they were really close to where I lived. We had an apartment, only child.
Where did you grow up?
Indiana. So I don't know if you know Purdue College.
Yes.
I lived like 5 minutes from the campus, like
Sweet.
just up the road.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so I grew up in a low income housing place. My mom was on food stamps and worked multiple jobs, and she worked hard growing up. And so I was there for my whole life, up until I was about 12 years old, but I don't really remember much of the early years, obviously, and I think it's kind of a blessing because my mom was still using up until I was about 5 years old. She had me going to a private Christian school because I think it was like, well, I need to do something for him that's good and Christian, because that's what she grew up with, right? And so went to a Christian school, but she was still using a lot, and it got bad to the point where I would constantly just be late for school because my mom she would get drunk the night before, or like just be on a trip or whatever, and just wake up with a hangover, wake up late, and so I'd be late to school, and there was a point where it was happening so often that the teachers had to have a talk with her, and then that's when she kind of woke up, and she's like, okay, I need to cut this off. And that was the start of her journey. Obviously she'd grown up Christian, but really like seriously pursuing God.
That's
awesome. Cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And so that was when I was like 5. But I don't really remember that. But I went to a Christian school for up until about 6th grade. I loved it. I was always around God, because my grandparents were Christian. I was going to a Christian school. Church wasn't very consistent. Church was maybe once or twice a year, or we would go sometimes. I remember we would do like Sunday school a few times during my childhood, that when it wasn't like Christmas or Easter. So it was semi-regular, but not anything consistent for me. And so I was always sort of like around God, but I had a lot of knowledge about him, head knowledge. So
I have a question, because I don't really know what like Christian school is like. So what do you do in Christian school? Like, what differentiates a Christian school from a public school?
I would say in most ways it's the same. I would say we would sometimes pray before classes, and I think we had a Bible class That's
pretty cool.
I can't remember because it's a little bit blurry, but I'm pretty sure they had that. I remember we would go through like different Bible passages at points and like talk about it with the class.
That's really cool.
But it was, in most ways, it was pretty similar to just your conventional elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so I was there for a while, and when I was about 8 years old, I remember this was kind of a significant moment because I remember me and my mom were looking at this book, and it was, I don't remember the title, but it was pictures of outer space, and it was talking about like, look at what God has made, basically. And we were looking through it, and she was reading it, and there's like these pictures of these giant stars and the galaxies and stuff. And I said, while she was reading, I was like, I don't know if I believe in God. And she was just totally taken by surprise, because I had nothing before indicated that, and I was in Christian school. I went to church. I knew about God, but then it was sort of out of left field for me to just be like, I don't know. But as I'm older now, I realize I didn't understand God, and so because I couldn't understand, I just didn't want to engage, and I was like, yeah, I don't believe. But I think deep down, the whole time, I would say I believed in a God, but I really pushed it down and just didn't acknowledge it. So that was when I was about 8 years old, and but I still went to Christian church, and I believe close to that time I started going to youth group with other kids at the church, and semi consistent with the church. But yeah, that was sort of those first years. But this whole time I was still kind of like, I don't know I don't know where I stand. And so I went through that, and when I was about 10, we started going to church regularly, and it was great. It was good to have consistency in my life, because besides my mom and my grandparents, there wasn't really that much consistency. I mean, I had friends at school and stuff, but nothing like of substance. And I never had like a great male role model growing up. I mean, with both sides of my family, just not great things with just like the history of the men in the family. My grandfather was abused like very heavily as a kid, and I don't even know all the stuff that happened there, but it was crazy. And obviously my dad was in the picture, and so I didn't really have a ton of great male role models, and the ones that were kind of just absent because they just weren't able to engage. And so it was hard. But then I started going to church regularly, and I remember making a connection with the pastor. We had a small church. It was maybe 100 people, so it was smaller. But I remember while we were going there would be times where he would come and pick me up, and we would serve at a homeless shelter or a food bank or something. So he'd take me along with him, and I remember I'd always like, I don't want to go, I just dreaded it. But looking back, it was something that was really good for me, and I really appreciate it now, because he was really the first positive male role model in my life at that point. Because I didn't know like what being a man was, because I just didn't have a grasp of what that looked like or what that meant. And so, yeah, I did that a few times, and it was great. And yeah, we were consistent there, and it was a really good season, for me when I was young.
Did he help, like, because you said you like had kind of buried the idea of God? Did he help kind of revitalize that feeling?
That's a good question. I would say, I think we had conversations about God,
Okay.
but at this point, and this was a pattern for the next few years, like, I knew all the right answers of like what to say, but it just, I didn't believe it deep down. But I just knew, like, if I said the right thing, then it would appease them, and I wouldn't have to have a hard conversation. Because I remember all throughout the time of being an unbeliever, I, like, with youth pastors or pastors, I always kind of skirted around those conversations.
Gotcha.
Like, I remember, to jump ahead a little bit, with my youth pastor, when I moved, which I'm jumping a little ahead, but when we moved, got plugged in somewhere, my youth pastor we went to camp, and he would have like a one-on-one with each of the boys in his group, and I remember just dreading it. I was like, he's gonna ask me about where I'm at with God, and I'm gonna have to fake it, because
Wow.
I don't want to. I really wanted to avoid the hard conversations, and I didn't want to engage with that type of thing, because it was like, I didn't want to be pressed on it, because I wanted to preserve this, because I was a good kid. I wasn't really that bad. I was pretty chill, and so I wanted to sort of maintain that persona per se, but that put that in jeopardy, to be like, oh, I'm not a Christian, or I don't believe in God. That was like, that's not a good Christian thing to do.
Yeah.
But my mom knew that I wasn't Christian, and this is something I really appreciate about her, is I know she was praying for me like hardcore, but she never, because a lot of times in Christian homes, the kids, it's just assumed you're a Christian, and then if you're not, then the parents are trying to force them, like, to be Christian. And that's why a lot of people, in my generation that are older, they're walking away with a lot of church hurt, a lot of pain with church, because it was forced down their throats as a kid, and it was forced on them when they weren't ready.
Okay.
And so, for me, my mom was aware, obviously, that I wasn't walking with the Lord, but she wasn't trying to force it down my throat.
That's
She
awesome.
would do a checkup every now and then, just be like, hey, where you at with it? And I always hated those conversations, because I mean, she would press me of, where are you at? Like, what do you think? What do you believe? And I didn't want to say.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I didn't want to say, but I think that part of my unbelief or my rejection of Jesus, it wasn't just I didn't understand him, but as I got older and learned more, it was more of I don't want to surrender my life to him, because
Wow.
it's like, man, I'm not going to get to do the fun stuff. Like, Jesus isn't fun. It's just a bunch of boring people that dress up nice on Sundays and sing some songs. That was my idea of Christianity. And so was like, I don't want that. Like,
Yeah.
that sucks. But then so that was kind of where it was just like, I just don't want that. And I didn't want to surrender because I wanted to do my own thing, you know? And so.
That's a super good point, and I feel like it's also really cool, like your mom giving you that freedom to kind of explore it on your own, but yet she kind of put it in your mind, and she gave you the right steps that you can take to get in the right direction, which takes me to a verse, Proverbs 22:6, that says, "Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it." And so I think that is really powerful, especially for like, it might be encouraging for parents as they're trying to navigate the faith with their children. Like, you can teach them the right things, but you can't help them believe.
Right.
And so I think it's so powerful that your mom was doing that and allowing you to explore that on your own. That's really cool.
Yeah, totally. And I heard the analogy once. It's like, you can make the introduction, but you can't make the relationship happen, you know? Like, if you have someone who, you know, your friend who is single but you really want them to get married, you can be like, oh, don't you think, like, he's a great guy? And like, yeah, you know, he's fine. But it's like, you can't force that relationship, but all you can do is make the introduction. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful for that, because that was probably the best thing, because I know if she had forced it down my throat, I mean, I would have probably kept up the ruse, but long term it wouldn't have been good, you know? So that was going on for a long time. But we were going to church regularly. And during this time, my mom switched to homeschooling, which was interesting because she was thinking about doing homeschooling, and the week that she was starting to consider it, out of the blue, because I'd been going to this school for however many years. I mean, I'd been going there at least till 5th grade, and then out of the blue, I was just like, hey, can I be homeschooled? And it was just like, out of the blue. Yeah. I think, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I just remember there was some stuff at school that was going on that was just, I was just not annoyed, but just hard stuff was happening, and I was like, I would be fine being homeschooled, you know? And so it was like, as she's happening to think about it, I out of the blue, I'm like, hey, could I be homeschooled?
That's really cool.
Yeah, so totally the Lord's timing.
Absolutely.
Looking back on it, because, you know, when people find out I'm homeschooled or was homeschooled, they're always like, did you like it, or would you have preferred public school? And what I say is, I wouldn't be who I am today if I'd gone to public school, because I'm very much easily conformed to like the crowd or to what other people are saying. And so I know if I had gone to public school, I don't even know what would have happened to me, but I know I would have been like so much more indoctrinated by the world than if I had been homeschooled. And so I'm very grateful for it. But yeah, it was definitely interesting being homeschooled, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that I was able to do it, because it made me into who I am today, and really developed my character, and it was awesome. So I was homeschooled through middle school, up till end of high school. So about 6 years.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Was your mom your teacher?
Yes. Yep.
So was she like able to like go more in depth with Christian ideas because of?
Yes. So when we were doing it, I don't remember everything, but I know. So it was a lot of online.
Okay.
And we did this course, and it was a history course, but it was something along the lines of, like, it was a world history book, but it was Christian, and so it was sort of painted in the light of Jesus, in the light of God, which was cool.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, it was super cool. But I was still at that point where I was like, I'm just not interested. But
Okay.
and it was interesting because I was submerged in the Christian culture, I guess, all my whole life basically. But yeah, for so many years, I just was like pushing it away, and I didn't want anything to do with it. But it was, I'm grateful for it. Looking back on it,
I feel like cultural Christianity is like a huge thing right now, and I can completely understand. Like, I know a lot of people that grew up going to church, and that was just their experience. And like you said, you can't force somebody to believe in something, even if they're in it all the time. Like, that is it's a clear example, which is really awesome. But I think I kind of have like this interest, or I have an interest because I don't know what it's like. So could you elaborate on what homeschooling looked like for you growing up?
Yeah. So I had several different experiences, because it was just at different times. My mom was at different capacities of how much she could invest. And at the beginning, it was like, we don't know what we're doing. But she found this course, and it had all the curriculum online in one place, and super simple. You just it's each day is lined up for the whole school year. So if it's day 5, you scroll down to day 5, and it's got like your history, your social studies, your English, all the whatever, math.
Yeah.
Everything is just in one place, and I would just click the link and do the reading, do the homework, whatever. So it was super simple, but later on, and I can hit more on it, but there's these things called co-ops, which I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Okay. Yeah, every homeschooler that's watching right now, they're like, oh, I know what that is. But basically, all the kids are doing school at home, but oftentimes, mostly it's at a church. There will be these things where it's co-ops. So it's a bunch of homeschooled kids that come together into a group, usually once a week. They vary. Like, there's some that'll meet once a week, some that meet 3 times a week, some where it's like full time. It's almost like a school, but less formal, where like the parents are doing the teaching. And so that's how most co-ops run. It's the parents volunteering, and they're running it, and they're teaching different things. And so at first it was online, and then later on I was doing a co-op, and it was very structured. It was called Classical Conversations, which is the most homeschool thing ever. But it was lovely. It was hard work though. We did all the normal subjects. At one point we were doing logic and Latin, which was very interesting. That was our language, and it was cool, because Latin is a root language for a lot of different languages now. And so it was just cool to see the connections, although I was terrible at it. So but so there was that, and then at the end, my senior year, or my last 2 years, junior and senior, I was at home again, and it was mostly online, but it was a hybrid of some online and some physical books, physical curriculum. And me and my mom would go through it. And so it'd be Monday we would do our math, and so how it would work, and this is how co-ops would work as well, but it would all be, for the one I did, it would all be in the same day. but it's like you go through math, you go through Latin, you go through logic, you go through like all the different subjects.
Mm-hmm.
You go through it for that week, and you're like, okay, this is the lesson for the week, and then you get homework at the end of the day, and then you have the whole week to do it, so that when you come back together next week, you have to have all your homework done from the week before of all the subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come back together, you review it, and then you go into the next cycle, and it's just like that
Yeah.
over and over again.
I'm about to ask a very ignorant question.
It's fine.
Did you like if you like woke up one morning and you're like, you know what, Mom, like I push it back a little bit, did you guys have freedom to like mess with the schedule to kind of allow you, and then also like if you want to go on family trips or whatever the scenario is?
Yeah, it was super flexible. So
That's
most days I wouldn't start till noon,
Oh, man, that's good.
which was
That's crazy.
it was
That's
nice.
great.
It was nice.
I'm sleeping in today.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna sleep in every day. But did that, and depending on the day, sometimes I'd end at 3, sometimes I'd end at 5.
Wow.
And yeah, it was nice. But it just depended on the homework. It just
Yeah.
depended on what I was doing and just circumstances, right? But the typical flow was start around sometime between 10 and noon, and sometime between 3 and 5.
So I was wondering, like, how did you like create social connections? Like, how did you like make friends? Like,
That's
was it, like,
a great question.
Through the
Yeah.
co-op, like, did you like, or was the co-op like kids from anywhere? Like,
Yeah. It was hard,
yeah.
especially at the beginning, because it was like we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't even know co-ops existed. So it was really just me and my mom. I remember we would every day. this went on for a while, but we would at lunch. My mom would make scrambled eggs and bacon almost every day, which like now. Every time I eat eggs, you know when you have eggs like so much and then it just starts to taste like that started to happen towards the end of that, and there's sometimes now where I just can't eat eggs and it's like but during that time, like scrambled eggs, bacon, and we'd play chess, and that was that was our lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was awesome. That was super fun. And we did that for a while, and towards the end, because I moved when I was 12, we moved to Kansas, which I can explain more, but we did start going to a co-op towards the end of our time with like people who were in the church and were also homeschooling, and that was cool, but that didn't last very long just because of the timing and us moving. But yeah, so that was a cool season. But it really just depends on, because I changed what curriculum, what program I was doing. I mean, at least 4 times over the course of my homeschooling career. And so it was kind of all over the place. And sometimes that's how it runs. Sometimes people just do one thing for the whole time that they're homeschooled. Just depends. But when we moved, we were getting more connected, like I personally, for like social stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, like we found a soccer thing. It was homeschoolers and just playing soccer once a week, and that was super fun, and really grew a love for soccer there. And we were doing a co-op, and yeah, I made a great few friends. Still friends with some of them today. They're awesome. But yeah, it was definitely hard at times, especially at the beginning, and not as much at the end because I had a lot of established relationships already, but it definitely was hard towards the end, like junior, senior year, because I didn't have that constant, like once a week we're meeting up, we're doing stuff together, but I was at home.
Yeah.
So yeah. it was kind of all over the place.
Mhm.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
It was fun. But yeah, so we started homeschooling, and then I remember my great grandparents live in Michigan, close to the lake, Lake Michigan, and so we would go up there during the summers sometimes. And my mom, at this point, had dated a couple guys, semi-seriously. There was one that was pretty serious, but it ended up falling through. But she started talking to this guy while we were in Michigan, and I remember her talking about it, and I remember her saying that they wanted to, because he lived in Kansas, and we're in Indiana, so that's kind of hard to do that. But they decided while I was there that they were gonna meet halfway in St. Louis, and go to, what's that? Six Flags.
Nice.
And that was like their first date.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, at the time I was just like, oh, that's cool. And that was, I think, 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And so it was like 10, 11, something like that. But over the course of time, things got more serious, and it was actually really fast. They were talking on the phone a lot, but by the second in-person date, they had decided that they were gonna get married, and this
Wow.
was, I believe, 6 months into the relationship. So it was fast. I could be wrong, but it was within 3 to 6 months where they were like, we're gonna get married.
Was
Like,
he very Christian?
Yeah,
Okay.
he was Christian, is Christian.
Because isn't that kind of like a thing? Like Christians get married? Yeah.
Yes,
So,
yes, yeah.
so, I mean,
it is. But typically it's like young couples.
Okay. Okay.
So it was just interesting because that wasn't the norm.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they met, and yeah, it was cool. And I remember we went to, I think it was somewhere in St. Louis, and I got to meet him for the first time. His name's Josh, and he was awesome. But it was sort of like, I was like really nervous, and I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like this guy that my mom's been talking to online and has met a couple times, and it's just weird.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I remember meeting him, and I mean, I was awkward, but he was super excited to meet me.
You're also only like 11, so
Yeah.
I mean,
Fair enough. Yeah, and so we went to a museum, and we just spent the day together going around, and it was fun.
cool.
Got to get to know him
Mhm.
more, and then things continued to get more serious between them, and then in late 2015, when I was 12, they got married.
Let's go.
And yeah, it was all so fast,
Mhm.
and it had just been me and my mom for so long, and so it was just weird. And there was a lot of hard conversations because like he was in Kansas and he didn't want to move to Indiana, and so it was just like, man, we're gonna have to leave everything I've ever known and everything that my mom's ever known, because she also had lived in Indiana her whole life,
Mhm.
and we're gonna move for this guy that I barely knew. And
Yeah.
so it was really crazy transition because it was happening so fast. But I was just kind of in with the process, and I remember I was very sad because I had my friends and family there, and so it was like, man, I'm leaving everything, and we're gonna do this. And so we moved in 2015. They got married in November, And I remember the wedding ceremony was really sweet. I remember he said some things. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he basically did vows for me, which was really sweet.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And, basically along the lines of, like, always be, like, a father figure to you, take care of you, things like that. And I remember I just bawled. Like,
Wow.
I was sobbing. That was, like, I think that was probably the hardest, maybe not the hardest, but definitely up there that I've ever cried. Like,
Wow.
yeah. But because I didn't know it was happening,
Yeah.
and it was just out of left field. And I think to have that, like, that acceptance of someone who's an older man, and who's like, I'm gonna take care of you, and that type of thing. And I hadn't had that before, and so it was like I didn't understand it at the time, like all the emotions with it. But looking back, it's like, oh, like that makes sense why that was so moving for me.
Can I just say, I'm like feeling very emotional right now because
Mm-hmm.
I can picture how you felt because I like know the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like envisioning that, and it's like you can't explain it,
Yeah.
but it's like when you don't have that,
Mm.
you never think about it,
Right.
but you just know, like you just know that something's missing, and like
Mm-hmm. Right.
to experience that is like
Yeah.
I'm like I can like feel your heart when that
Yeah.
happened, which is
Yeah.
crazy. I've never. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it was.
Thank you for sharing that, because
Yeah.
that like kind of hit home for me. you know?
Yeah. It was really sweet, and like
Yeah.
especially as a kid, but
Oh,
like
man.
to get that acceptance, that love, it's like when you didn't have it. And I know you're identifying with it, it's like, yeah, when you didn't have that, it's like, dang, that changes things,
Yeah.
and so it was really beautiful. And then we moved, and it was a crazy year because we moved, and it was adjusting to new life. I pretty quickly got plugged into a youth group because it was like, I knew that, because I had grown up sort of in that space. But I was still not that interested in God. It was more for the social stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so went there, and then my mom got pregnant with my sister, and
Wow.
I had never had a sibling before. And they found out New Year's night or New Year's Eve that they were pregnant.
Let's go.
That was really cool.
That is cool.
And so then, my mom's pregnant. It's like we're moving into this new place, and just chaos in this time. But got plugged into a youth group. I did theater for several years.
Let's go.
Yeah, it was fun.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't drop that on us
My
now.
first play was Treasure Island,
That
and
is so
I got the lead, which was
So
crazy.
you were locked in.
No, what's
Yeah,
fun?
you
No,
were.
no. Listen to me. So it was a small community theater, and they like to do it with the new kids where they give them the big role. But I almost fumbled the audition so bad because you're supposed to go in and you have like a monologue prepared and you're acting it out. And I was so nervous, and I went in, and they're sitting at the table, they're all looking at me, and I had never done theater before. Actually, I had done a little bit before, but it's very minor. But I was so nervous, and in the middle of my monologue, I just completely blanked. Like, it was bad.
But you improv'd it perfectly.
No, I was like, I had to pause for probably 30 seconds. I was like, wait, hold on. And I like paused, and I had to like, it was so my heart was beating so fast because it was literally, I was in mid-sentence, just like, I just forgot.
Yeah,
And then
that's valid.
I took some time, collected myself, and then I remembered it, and then I did the whole thing. But then I got the lead, which was crazy.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that at all. I was expecting just like to be a tree or something, you know. But I got the lead, and it was fun. And another funny story with that, we had 3 shows, and I think it was the second show. We went in for intermission to the green room. We're hanging out, and then I'm in the first scene back in Act 2, and I go out, and I think I was tied up, and I was sitting on the ground, and then somehow I like got free, and I like ran away. That was the scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the person was saying their lines, and then I got out, and I stood up, and as I stood up, I heard this thud. I'm like, what is that? And I look down, and my phone is on the floor.
No. Oh man, that hurts.
And I'm looking at it, and then I look at the person, and he looks down, and he looks at me. We make eye contact, and I have to cover my mouth because I'm just like, I'm about to start laughing. But you know, you gotta keep your composure.
Yeah, of course.
And then, but he had lines, so I didn't have to say anything. So I just covered my mouth the whole time,
Good.
and then I put my foot on the phone as we're doing the scene, and then right when I run away, I like slid the phone back to one of the other people.
That's tough.
And then they grabbed it, and I ran out.
That's
But,
so smooth.
yeah, it was stressful because I was like,
Yeah.
what's happening? But it was
Calculated.
it was a great show, and it was really awesome to get that experience. You know, get to be in theater, and I was very introverted as a kid, and so to get out of myself a little bit was it was really good. But yeah, I went to youth group for many years. You know, basically from when I moved there up till senior year, and it was good. It was. But it was really easy to fake it because it was just more information dumping. So it was like I knew all the right things to say. And I was and this is why, to go back to your point about the cultural Christianity thing, I think it could be so dangerous sometimes because, one, I think those are the hardest people to evangelize to because it's like, no, I'm good. You know, I got a little bit of Jesus in my life. I've gone to church, so I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need any more. I can just be content with what I have. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough, you know, cars. I don't have enough whatever, but I have enough of God in my life, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I was in that spot where it's like, yeah, you know, I'm fine.
Checking the boxes.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Go
And,
to church.
Yep, and I was going.
church friends,
yes,
yeah.
exactly, and I was able to cover it so well. And I mean, whenever we did small groups, I was always, you know, like pretty active with giving the answers.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, I look like a good kid.
Yeah.
I have all the right answers. I'm going to church stuff. So everyone's like, yeah. You
It was
know.
like an extra subject.
Yeah.
You know, you get all the right answers. You
Yeah.
trying to get the good grade, pass by.
Exactly. Yeah. And I aced it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is kind of bad, but
No.
yeah, I think there's just throughout my life been this, I don't know why, but this tendency to just hide things or kind of push things down that I thought wouldn't be appealing to people. And so, you know, I never felt like I was being myself. And sometimes that's something I still struggle with, where it's like, yeah, like trying not to fake it, but be my authentic self, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it almost felt a little bit like imposter syndrome in those years, because yeah, it was like I knew all the right stuff to say, but in secret, you know, I just wasn't following God at all. I was like, this is another part of my testimony, but like with pornography and stuff, I mean, that was bad. But it was crazy because almost every time, like, I'm not kidding you, almost every single time, within 24 hours of me, you know, looking at something, like, my mom would just be like, you know, hey, like, check in on it. And I was such a bad liar that she'd always know that I had looked at stuff. But it was, I mean, it was insane. Like, literally, she had, like, Holy Spirit, like, detector or something. I don't know. It was crazy. But almost every single time, like, I couldn't get away with it. And
Wow.
it put a fear of God in me, in a sense, because I was afraid to, because I knew if I looked, she's gonna ask me the next day or, like, later today. Like, I knew, like, guaranteed to happen. And sometimes there'd be spans of time, like weeks, months, and then as soon as I did it, the next day she'd be like, you know, she'd be checking it, and it's like, what? How? How'd you know? But yeah, you know, just she knew me so well, so she was able to spot it. But yeah, so it was like this double life in a sense, where it's like, in secret, I'm just not a great person, you know, but everyone thinks I am. Everyone thinks, like, I'm the good kid, I'm the good Christian boy. But in reality, yeah, it was, and, you know, like, some people might be like, but, you know, you weren't that bad. But it's like, all sin is equal to God, and
Definitely.
it doesn't matter, you know, even if I looked at porn once, even if I lied once, like, I was, and just would lie all the time, even about stuff that I didn't need to. I don't know why, but it was almost like I was addicted to it. It's weird to say that, but that's kind of the best way I can describe it. Like, I would lie sometimes for no reason, like, but I just did it all the time. It was like, like, you know, that's like typical teenager things, because this is like my early teen years, but, you know, my heart was just evil, you know, it was wicked. Like, that's how God saw it, because it's all equal to him. Even if you've only done it a little bit, it doesn't matter. Like, we all fall short, and the wages of our sin is death. It deserves judgment. There needs to be payment for it, right? And so, yeah, it was just this dichotomy of, like, good Christian boy. And I remember thinking to myself, I remember this very specifically, where I was thinking about all of that, just the lies, the porn, the whatever else, the, like, even just, like, I mean, addicted to video games. I mean, it was unhealthy, how much I would play and how attached I became to it. But I remember thinking about all those things, and I remember I was like, if I keep going this way, like, this is not a good road. And this was when I was like 13, you know, but I remember thinking that, and I remember, like, recognizing the signs. It was like, if this continues, I mean, I could be a completely different person. Because, I mean, I had heard the horror stories of the kids who grew up in church and then they rebelled and, you know, left the faith, and I was scared to become that, because it was like I had this persona of being good, because, like, I knew I was afraid, because my whole mom's side of the family was Christian, and I didn't talk about this at all, but I was close with my dad's side of the family, just not my dad. But that was interesting. And my dad, including him, there's 13 kids,
Wow.
which is crazy.
Wow.
But there is a lot of brokenness in that family just over the years, unfortunately. But And I don't know all the details, but yeah, I've heard some crazy things. But it was just very broken, you know? And so, yeah, but I knew if I felt like I was going to let people down if I went that route with my life, that dark road. And I didn't want to let people down because I very much wanted to meet people's expectations. That was something I was very like attached to, you know?
It's crazy because I feel like I resonate with a lot of what you're saying. And I also want to point, I think a big part of it is the fact that our dads weren't in our lives. And so I think it is like that fear of people leaving. And like we want to constantly make sure that they are liking us. And so if that means we have to say the right things, do the right things, that's what we'll do. And so I completely hear you. That's it's tough.
Yeah, that's so real. Yeah, so that went on for several years. I remember, did I mention the thing about, I didn't, okay. I remember one time when I was in youth group, there was a time where, I don't remember what the prompt was, but we were in small groups, and it was something along the lines of raise your hand if you're a Christian. It was like something dumb. But I raised my hand. Well, I kind of halfway raised my hand because I was conflicted.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not actually, and that was, I believe, conviction from the Holy Spirit, but I didn't realize it at the time. But I was like, but I'm not, so I don't want to make it up. But I was saying, it's like, but I want to, keep appearances up. And I remember I was so good at faking it that I was like halfway raising my hand, and my friend looked over and he's like, dude, you're a Christian, just raise your hand all the way, like what are you doing?
Wow.
But it was like, everyone thought I was this great Christian person, but I wasn't. And so throughout this time it definitely had shifted to, although I don't think I had acknowledged it, it was this thought of, I don't want to surrender to Jesus, because that means I'm gonna have to give stuff up, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep doing the fun stuff. But I would say I believed in God, but I think if you had asked me at the time, I would have been like, no, I don't believe in it. But
it's just so crazy that you were having these thoughts at 13 years old.
Yeah.
That's so impressive. I can't get over that.
Right. Yeah. This was, 13, 14. And around this time, 2016, so this was the year after we moved. There was a weekend that my parents and we did this. It was like it's not a tradition, but it's a thing that some Christian families will do. It's like a purity trip, basically, where you take your kids somewhere fun or special, and then you talk about the birds and the bees. You talk about all that stuff. And it was very sweet, It was, but it's always at that age. It's awkward. But we went and we went to this Great Wolf Lodge. I don't know if you know what that is.
I feel like I've heard of it.
It's like a hotel, but it's got this huge water park in it. It's great. And I had always wanted to go there. So I was like, yes, I get to go there. And then the last day of the trip, we woke up. It was just a normal day. My mom got a call from someone. It was from my grandma on my dad's side had called her in the middle of the night, but she was sleeping, so she was she couldn't answer, but she called back, and she found out that my biological dad had passed away. like
Oh my
the
goodness.
night before, or like the day before, from a drug overdose. He was found. He was 31. I think he got found like in a hotel room. It was wild. Totally out of left field,
Mhm.
obviously, because but I didn't have a relationship with him, so it was weird because on one hand it's like I should feel sad, I should feel like bad, but at the same time it's like I had only met him twice. Once when I was very young, like 6, and he came over to the house a couple times, and then he backed out. And then the other time when I was 10, maybe, it was like very brief. So it was very shocking, but it was just like, to be honest, I didn't care that much. And it was very sad. Like, I'm very sad about it looking back on it, because I definitely would have enjoyed to have a relationship with him, because I mean, it's your dad, and and I knew he felt he didn't feel like he could invest emotionally into my life, and so that's why he didn't feel ready. He never felt ready, and so that's why he wasn't able to, like, we never really met up or anything, just because he didn't feel ready. He didn't feel capable, and so it was sad, but it was crazy because God definitely used it for the good, and it's like, why, how, what do you mean? And because at the time, my stepdad was talking with my mom about adopting me, and
Wow.
the way that it works when the biological parent is alive is the biological parent has to sign over their parental rights and be like, basically, I give up my parental rights of this child and you can take them. That's the process. But we went to his funeral, my dad's funeral, and I almost didn't go. I was very conflicted about it, but I decided to go, and it was very interesting. Going there was weird. It was kind of surreal. But at the funeral, they said how they thought he wouldn't have signed over the rights if he was alive, the parental rights, even though he wasn't invested.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, yeah, he probably wouldn't have, and so, it's like, it's so sad that he passed away, but at the same time, it created the opportunity for my stepdad to really come in, and start the process, and it took a while, but it was really cool, just the whole way that things played out, because this was also around the time, close to when I converted, when I really was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'd done the youth group thing, I knew all the info, but what started happening was my mom, this happened several times, where she would get sick, and it wasn't anything major, just some sort of like stomach bug or whatever, cold, but my stepdad would pray for her, and then she'd be better the next day, which wasn't normal, and that happened several times in the course of maybe a month. It was like freaking me out, because I was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah.
Like, this is not normal, because I had seen this happen before, and it like would be days, and so the fact that she's back to 100% the next day, I was like, what is going on? This is so weird. It was happening multiple times, and I remember one night I was in bed and I was thinking about it, and I was just like, I think God is real. And like, I think deep down I kind of believe that, but like, I was acknowledging it.
Yeah.
to myself for the first time. Whereas like I really think that God is real, because how can this be happening otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
And so about a week goes by and nothing happens. And then we're doing a Bible study, like a family Bible study, through I don't remember what book of the Bible, but we were reading this passage one night, and like they both knew I wasn't Christian, and they both weren't trying to shove it down, but they were trying to like, do the Bible studies, get me at the youth group, stuff like that, praying for me. But then I don't remember the context, but basically there's multiple passages in the Bible where it talks about Satan being the prince of this world. And so there's usually just like 3 questions, and it was kind of corny thinking about it, but it was something like, who's the prince of your heart, or who's the ruler of your heart, or something like that. And I was like, well, if it's not Jesus, then it's Satan, which was crazy. But I was like, that's just the logical outcome. And we were talking about it, and I don't remember the conversation, but I just remember at some point I just casually was like, oh yeah, but I believe in God, which was news to them, because I, up to that point, was like, no, just rejecting God. And then I just say that, I'm like, wait, what? And like hold the phone, and we start talking about it, and we go to Romans 10:9, and it says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved.
Wow.
And so we went through that verse, and I was like, well, I said I believe in God, and I believe it in my heart, so I guess I'm a Christian now. It was like, it was really crazy. It was really fast.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, I guess I'm a Christian now.
Yeah.
It was weird, because up to that point I hadn't been. And
you didn't have like, you didn't fall to the ground.
No,
and, like,
no,
do a
no.
backflip,
No,
like,
it was totally just like, I just said it, and they're like, do you believe it? And I was like, yeah. And it's like, that's awesome, and so nothing crazy happened. It was just very simple, but I remember it was such a sweet time, because I started feeling conviction for things that I never had before, like the lying, the porn, right? It was like I would feel bad, because like I knew I was supposed to feel bad, but now it was like I was actually in my heart genuinely like, I don't want to do that anymore, like there was that confliction. And I remember reading the word, and it was just like, whoa, I love this. But
awesome.
there was nothing crazy that happened. It was just like this simple, okay. And then like the Lord just started working from the inside out. He just, in his mercy, like, he kept pursuing me. I mean, like, I've thought about it before. I'm just like, man, like, I would not have waited 15 years for me, I look at my life, I look at, I knew all the right things, but I was continually rejecting him, continually pushing him away, continually like, I do not want to give you my life, but yet like just God was so patient with me and so merciful, and he just kept running after me. And I'm just so thankful, because like me and my wisdom, me and my knowledge, I would not wait 15 years for someone, like I would get impatient after not even a year, right? Like after 6 months, and I'd just be like, done. I'm not gonna pursue this relationship anymore, right? But like the fact that God kept running after me, kept pursuing me, kept trying to pull me in, and yeah, just so like God is such a merciful God. He's such a patient God, and I'm so thankful for that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is, and it's just the Lord and His kindness. But yeah, it was cool because around this time we did it. So this was
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah. So your dad passes away, and then you really feel the presence of God, and you are revealed, and you become a Christian. Like, how close do those two things happen?
Yeah, so that's where I'm a little bit blurry. So my father passed away May 22nd, 2016. That's when I
Okay.
found out. This was a little bit later, but then the process of adoption started happening.
Yep.
And then I became a Christian, but
Okay.
honestly, it was about a year apart
Okay.
from my father passing away to me becoming a Christian, and there was like this process of adoption and all the legal
Gotcha.
stuff.
So the next question I have is like a little intense.
That's great. I love it.
So, do you think your dad passing away was like the spiritual, like, was that like a blockage of your spirit, do you think? Because, I don't know, it's just the timing just seems a little too perfect because, like,
Sure.
do you feel like knowing your dad was like living a life and like your dad was out there, and like him passing away was like kind of like a resolve, like you don't have to like really think about him as much anymore, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think worrying about like your dad and was like kind of like that was kind of holding you back from really becoming a Christian, or does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say no.
Okay.
I didn't really ever think about him.
Okay.
Because he wasn't in my life, I wasn't in his.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I wouldn't say there is. I mean, as far as to my knowledge, there wasn't any kind of blockage.
Gotcha.
Maybe that I couldn't see or that I couldn't understand, but I don't think so. I think it was just the Lord used it for good. 'Cause,
Definitely.
Romans 8:28, like He uses all things for our good,
Absolutely.
for the good of those who love Him, and
And even though it may not have seemed like it at the time,
right.
and that's with anything, any hardship.
Yeah.
But
And I don't want to be like God killed my dad.
No,
right?
yeah, of
That's-
course.
Yeah,
That's,
of
that
course.
didn't. That totally wasn't what happened. But
Of course.
like God just in His sovereignty, like it was just the perfect timing.
Of course.
And so yeah, so it was really cool because we like started going on a mission trip. We went on several throughout my time at the youth group, but then in Kentucky, so we went to Kentucky, like Appalachia. It's like probably the poorest part of the country.
Wow.
I mean, it's like crazy the level of poverty there. But we got to serve there for a week, and it was really cool. And that was right around the time where I accepted Christ, and so it was cool getting that like experience. Whereas before, it was like I was going to be with friends, have a fun time. Where now, there still definitely was that, but it was also like, okay, like I'm doing this like with God now, which was cool. And I got baptized a month later,
Yes,
August
sir.
21st, 2018.
Let's go.
It was at the lake in our small town in Kansas, and it was raining that day.
Nice.
And my youth pastor and the assistant youth pastor baptized me, because I would say my youth pastor definitely, when I became a Christian and moving forward, was a big influence for my faith. Obviously my parents were, but
Yeah.
besides my parents, he was probably like, the biggest Christian role model in my life. He was awesome, and I learned so much, just like growing a love for the word, the promises of God, like looking at that, like going deeper into prayer and those types of things. But yeah, I had him baptize me, and it was awesome. But it was so cool because right around that time, so it was kind of crazy. I'm remembering this all now, but so around the time when it was like, okay, I'm gonna get baptized, a week before I was supposed to get baptized, the co-op that I was going to, I think it had ended at this point because it was summer. But it was in the co-op that I had been in the last school year. It was just me and 2 other people. It's like pretty small. It was a guy and a girl, and the girl ended up getting in a car crash and passed away like a week before
Wow.
my baptism.
Wow.
And then also at the same time, there is stuff going on with the adoption, and then it finalizes. And so we're like, what if we do a celebration with the baptism of like, it's a celebration of being baptized and coming into my family in God, but also like in this heavenly Father, but also like this earthly Father, like coming in, because it was like right at the same time.
Yeah.
That's
And
so
it was
beautiful.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful day, and it was really sweet because the girl whose family, the girl who passed away, her family came and to my baptism, and that was I mean, it was just a crazy circumstances. But I remember that really, especially as I was like about to get baptized, it really sobered me up, and I was like, man, we have to use our time. Like, we're on a limited clock. We have to live eternally, like with
Absolutely.
that eternal mindset. And so like to have that right at the beginning of my walk was just like just crazy set of circumstances and everything kind of coming together. It was chaotic, but it was like really beautiful.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I don't want to skim over that. I feel like it's so important because like it could easily be deemed just a coincidence that the paperwork just happened to go through, but I feel like God's timing is everything.
Yeah.
And like just the fact that he made it possible for all of these things to happen, with hardship and with circumstances, but like you said, God uses everything for good. And so just the fact that the timing, I mean, with specifically in regards to the paperwork getting through, and like just seeing over the course of how that has affected your life, and then getting this full moment, like how are you feeling? Like,
Yeah. I definitely was overwhelmed because so much was happening in that time. I don't want to say I was numb, but it was sort of like when I was saved, where everything was kind of just happening so fast that I didn't have time to fully process. But then it was like, oh man, like, this is happening, and I mean, it was really beautiful. And I remember at the party, like everyone prayed over me, and it was awesome. Like,
Let's go.
I mean, there was like, I have the photo somewhere, but I mean, at least 50 people. That's just like when that many people are praying over you, it's like, it's special.
For sure.
Yeah, and so it was just really beautiful, and I remember, like, I look back on it just, so thankful, and it's just like the timing of God, the poetry of God, just to do that and in his timing, like, yeah, what an awesome testimony. And, you know, he's awesome. My dad, Josh, he's awesome. You know, so thankful for him, because again, it was like I didn't have many good examples, but he was definitely one of the first real examples, not just of a good man, but of a Christian man. And so I'm just so thankful that God blessed us with him. So thankful, you know. So it was an amazing day, beautiful, even though it was rainy, but spiritually it was beautiful.
It could also be like a symbol of like, well, obviously baptism is a symbol of washing everything away, but
didn't even think of that. That's good. Yeah, with the rain washing away. That's good.
God wanted you to get extra stuff.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
just, yeah.
you wanted me to get a double portion.
Exactly.
That's what it was. Yeah, it was freezing that day.
yeah. You're like, I love you, God. But let me,
Exactly.
get a towel and
Yeah, well, and it was like people were running late.
Yeah.
and it, you know, it's rainy, it's cold.
You're
and it's
standing
like,
there just
right,
waiting
exactly, and
for
everyone's
everyone.
waiting,
Yeah.
and it's like, should we just go, or should we wait for these people?
Yeah.
No, but it was great. I loved it. And so, yeah, it was super cool. Just that time of growing in God and the Word and conviction. And then that was in 2018. You know, I'm going to youth group. I'm helping out. I think 2019, when I was, was I a, I don't, because I was homeschooled, I can't remember the high school, what's the first one? Freshman, yes. Sophomore, junior, senior. I think I was a sophomore.
okay.
And then my youth pastor asked me to help start leading like the middle school youth group.
Wow.
And that was cool. That was definitely an experience. Working with I am so thankful for our youth pastors who work with middle schoolers, because it's hard. But it's awesome, you know. So shout out to youth pastors out there. Thank you for your service. The Lord has called you to that. But I got to do that for a few years, and that was a good experience, you know. Growing in leadership, and it was like I didn't know what I was doing, you know. I was just kind of thrown in because they didn't really have that much help, and yeah, I mean, it was hard, but I learned so much from that experience. And you know, as I'm looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, God has definitely used what he taught me in those times now, which is awesome. You know, like nothing goes to waste. Even if we think it does, like God uses everything, and he redeems so many things. But that was a great period of time, and just growing consistent in community. Still, it was interesting because when we moved to Kansas, we had been going to a church regularly, and then we left, and so we were trying to find churches and never really found somewhere consistent that we liked. Even though I was going to youth group at this church, it was a Presbyterian church, and that's what my mom had grown up in, and I had also grown up in a little bit, but they were looking for more of like the activity of the Holy Spirit within it, as well as, you know, like the Word and stuff. And so, yeah, it was hard because we didn't have a consistent church at this time, and there was a church that we really liked, but it was 30 minutes away from where we lived, and with a newborn and me, it was just hard to do. And so we didn't have a consistent church, and still didn't have a consistent Sunday morning church. I was very consistent with the youth group and was very invested, like, in the people there, and it was great. But yeah, like those Sunday mornings were non-existent for me. Yeah, so then 2020 happens, and we were supposed to go on a mission trip, and it was going to be like awesome because it was going to be to the Bahamas. I was going to turn 17 there, and like it was going to be awesome. And then that was and my birthday's in March, and then everything starts shutting down. Trip gets canceled, and I remember there was still stuff that was open, so we're like, okay, we can celebrate my birthday, like we can go somewhere. And I don't know if you've heard of this place called Main Event, but they've got like arcade, laser tag, bowling alley.
Cool.
Yeah, it's sick.
Okay.
Yeah, but we did a birthday party there, but across all of the bowling alleys there's projectors, and basically above every single bowling alley, it's like these giant projections that it's like the width of 4 lanes or something, but basically every single screen was like NBA is shutting down, things are starting to shut down, so we're like literally it's like we're bowling and we're looking, it's like 50,000 people have died from COVID.
Wow.
And like things are starting to shut down. It's like this might be the last thing for a while, because stuff was at that time it was just weird because no one knew what to do. And so some places were open, some places weren't, and I remember we called that place like 5 times to make sure, like, are you guys gonna be open when we get there, because we don't want to pull up and it's closed. But they were open. But yeah, it was like we were literally watching, because I think it was the NBA that shut down first, and then the same day just everything else followed suit. So it was like we're literally watching that unfold.
That's insane.
And it's like, okay. It's crazy.
Getting
and
PTSD, bro.
2020,
yeah, it was wild.
Terrible.
Yeah, and then everything got shut down, and honestly, COVID was a really good time for me. It was hard just because the very little social interaction that I had and the very little friends that I had, like we were doing a soccer thing very consistently with a group of people. That got shut down, co-op shut down, everything's shutting down. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on? But in COVID, the Lord definitely, that was up to that point, that was probably the most I had grown, like in my walk. Right at the beginning of 2020, end of March, my mom is like, hey, I'm gonna watch this thing about, this guy's gonna talk about the Holy Spirit on Facebook Live. And I was like, okay. Then she's like, do you want to watch it? I was like, okay, sure. And we watch it, and he starts talking about this thing called the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, what? And I had never heard of this. I was like, what the heck is this? And then he's like, okay, guys, I'm going to pray for you, and we're going to pray that you start speaking in tongues. And I'm like, what the heck? What does this mean? And but it was one of those things, like with salvation, with the day I got baptized, it was just happening so fast, but I was just like, I'll hop in for the ride. And so he starts praying, and like, I felt God in a way that I never had. I felt the Holy Spirit in a way, and I felt so light, like it felt like I was floating, honestly. Like, but it was awesome, and it was just something I never experienced before. But it was the first time that I had ever really like actually felt God, not just read about him or sang worship songs or whatever, but like actually like felt his presence for the first time, and it was super cool.
So when you say you felt God, like what could you, like, for someone that hasn't experienced something like that, how would you describe that?
Yep. So I will say first off, I think a lot of people experience God differently, so it's not the same for everyone.
Yep.
For me, and this is something consistent, so the thing that what isn't normal for me is that like light feeling where like I just felt so light, but I felt like this heat in my chest, almost like fire, and even to this day, there's times where I'm talking or I'm reading the Bible or someone's speaking something to me, and I'll like feel that heat, that fiery, and that's when I know like, okay, like Holy Spirit's on this,
Yeah.
like God's on this thing, you know, like I even feel it right now, like as I'm speaking, and so it's like, okay, like, you know, God's here,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, he's always with us, but
Yeah.
manifesting himself. But people experience God in different ways. I know some people will experience him in sort of like it feels almost like lightning through their body, and like this like shock almost. It's hard to describe. I've only had that happen a couple times when it's like a really powerful encounter, but it just varies. But for me, it's like usually in this area I'll feel heat. You know, I don't know why there, but that's just what it is. And so that's how I experienced God. But that was like right at the beginning of 2020, and for me this was just like, okay, this happened. But as I went on to like later on and started talking to other people, and they had also been baptized in the Spirit, they're like, you got baptized in the Spirit over Facebook Live? And I'm like, yeah, is that weird? And they're like, yeah, like I've never heard of that before. And you know, to me, that was just my experience.
Yeah.
So it was like, it wasn't weird, but it was like, people hadn't heard of that before, like experienced that before. But it just goes to show God can work in anything, anyway. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, like.
And he knows like what you need individually, like what
Yes.
you need individually. So
Yes.
like it's
Totally.
he's gonna communicate to you in a different way, like
Totally.
you said. So
Yeah, and for the first time after that happened, my emotions, because I wasn't emotionless, but I was very closed off in a lot of ways. But after that happened, I remember like I would be reading my Bible and I'd start crying. It was like I had never been emotional like that before. I'm like, what is going on? Why am I crying? You know, but it was the Holy Spirit just working in me. And you know, besides salvation, I will say that is one of the most significant moments in my life so far within my walk with the Lord, is when I got baptized in the Spirit, because like it was just this, it like unlocked so much. It unlocked the Word in a new way, and felt the presence of God, and he started speaking to me in a way that I never heard before. And I remember one time, as things were starting to open back up, this was 2021, the first time that I felt God so clearly speak to me. I was mowing my lawn. We were out in the country. We had a lot of property. We had a riding mower, so I was just doing the mowing, listening to some music, and I was thinking about youth group and going back to it, and just all of a sudden out of nowhere, I felt like God said, I want you to tell them about the Holy Spirit and about the baptism of the Holy Spirit.
wow.
And I was like, what? Because it was a Presbyterian church, and just that part of the church isn't very familiar with that, the Holy Spirit. I mean, the Holy Spirit is probably one of the most divisive things in the church today. And so for me to go into somewhere and to speak on something that was very like unfamiliar was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I was petrified because
Yeah.
I hated public speaking. I was so socially anxious growing up as a kid. Like, it was bad. I hated doing any kind of public speaking, and then God wants me to do that. But it was like so undeniable because it came out of nowhere, and I felt his, like, up to that point, it was the strongest I'd ever felt his presence in my life. And it was like so clear. And I was like, I don't want to do this, you know, but I was so I guess it was like the fear of the Lord, where it's like, it was so clear. I can't just walk away and just act like it didn't happen. But I remember as we started going to youth group again, I knew I was supposed to like talk to my youth pastor, but I literally avoided him for like a month because I didn't want it, because I knew if I started talking to him that it would probably come up. And so I was like, I'm not even going to talk to him. So I like was avoiding it, but then eventually I brought it up and he was down for it, and we had to have multiple meetings where I was just like explaining it more because he just wasn't very familiar with it. But something that was really meaningful was one of the last conversations we had. You know, we were talking about it, and I was like talking about like the biblical places where it happens, and he said something along the lines of, you know, I don't completely understand this, but I trust you, and so
Let's go.
I will let you do it. And
Wow.
that was huge, because that, you know, it's like he's giving his blessing, so it's like, okay, like I can do this. It was huge. And then just over the course of time, it ended up taking a long time, but like over the course of maybe I think it was almost a year. It was almost a year to the day, just because of life, and just was slow on putting it together. But a year to the day is when the Lord spoke it to me. Is when I shared it with the youth group.
Let's go.
Which was, yeah.
What a coincidence.
Right, yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, crazy. But it was amazing, and I was so scared when I did it. But people, there wasn't like this huge like move of God that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was 17. Not saying that if you're 17 that can't happen, but yeah, it was just like I shared and I was obedient, and it was scary, but people were listening and people were receptive, and it was really cool. And yeah, so I just shared, and that was that. It was awesome. So
Have you stayed in communication with any of those middle schoolers at the time? They were middle schoolers, now they're older.
not with the middle schoolers.
Okay.
I keep in touch with my youth pastor.
Gotcha.
But
Has he like learned more about the Holy Spirit since you opened his eyes to it?
I would say so.
That's awesome.
But I think it's just different experiences for different people.
for
So
sure.
we're definitely not like in the same place, and it's not that one is better than the other. It's just
Yeah.
we're in different places. But I would say he's definitely learned more and opened up more to it over
That's
the
amazing.
course of time. But yeah,
That's amazing.
so thankful
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah, I have a question that you might not have the answer to.
Okay.
I hope you do, because I think it's important for the audience. But what would you say, because I feel like a lot of people, one of the reasons that they can't get behind Christianity is they look at the church and they see how divided the church is on something that seems like, why would you be divided if you guys believe the same thing? So
Right.
what would you say to that, to combat that argument? And if not, we can.
I would say if you look at a garden, if it's all just the same thing, then that's boring. But there's beauty in diversity. But I can see how it's hard for people, when there's people dividing over things. And I think God's heart is for the church to be one, because we were one church. But now we're the most divided religious group in the world, Christians. And so and everyone's like, this is the right way, but the only way is Jesus. Jesus said he's the way, the truth, and the life. And that's the most important thing at the end of the day, is Jesus. I would say that we as humans aren't perfect, you know, God has allowed us to be his representatives on earth, and we're not perfect, but God still works through imperfection. And the imperfections make his perfection that much more beautiful.
Yes, sir.
And it's sometimes hard to see because there's a lot of junk. But if you can just like Hebrews 12 says, like, fix your eyes on Jesus, that's the only thing that's necessary. That's the only thing you need is to look at him. And so, yeah, that's what I would say to that question.
I think that is an excellent answer.
That was
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that was sort of my journey up to that point, and then in June of 2021 we went to a mission trip with my youth group to Alaska, and that was super cool, and we got to serve there, and it was awesome. It was weird because it was in the summer, so it was like 11 o'clock at night and it looked like it was sunset. It's like the sun never set. It was so weird.
Wow.
But yeah, it was an awesome time to serve there. But from that opportunity, at the end of the week that we were there, several of the students recommitted their lives to Jesus, which was awesome. And one of them that recommitted wanted to be discipled, and so he asked Eli, who was the youth pastor, I want to be discipled, and he was like, great. And then he talked to me and he said, okay, you're gonna disciple him. And I was like, what does that even mean? And it was, but I got to do it. I started discipling him, and it was a big transition for me because at the time it was like sort of in this groove where it's very familiar, very like, here's the routine for the week and it stays pretty much the same, not a lot of change. And so to throw that in, it's like, whoa, okay. And it made me have to like really step up, because it's like, okay, if I'm gonna disciple somebody, like, I have to be in a good place. And it's not like I was in a bad place, but there's times where you get comfortable and then it's just like you just slow down with your walk, and just things become normal, and you're not getting uncomfortable. And so so I started doing that, and that was a huge growing experience for me. And it was amazing, and I learned so much from it. And I did that up until I moved again. So that was for about a year that I did that, almost exactly, actually, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, it was a great learning experience for me. And then when I was 19, so I graduated a little bit late, but 2022, 19, I graduated high school, and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life, so I'm just gonna take a break for a year, figure things out, work. I was working as a lifeguard at the time, and it was nice because it was at a gym with an indoor pool, and they needed a morning person, and because I was homeschooled, I could go and get a bunch of homework done and work, get paid. It was like almost getting paid for doing school, because there was hardly anyone there. And yeah, so it was great, just working, and I started working out consistently, and it was a good season. But then I graduated, and it was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do, so I'll just keep doing this, and maybe branch out a little bit, see what happens. Maybe I'll go to college, maybe not. And then there was something coming up called Descend, and it was a conference, like a big conference that was happening in Kansas City, which that was about an hour from where I lived. I was like, okay, I definitely want to check this out, because I know Francis Chan's going to be there, and Francis Chan was someone who like I really looked up to in the faith. Like his videos were definitely very influential for me, And so, yeah, I went with a group of friends, and it was awesome. And during that time, when Francis was speaking, there was a bunch of speakers, but he mentioned that there was this school that they were going to do in California, and I was like, that's cool, but I didn't really think about it, just because I never envisioned myself being in ministry. I was like, I'm going to get a job and just going to do that. And then a few days after the event, the big event, a video came out, and it's by Crazy Love, which is his ministry, and it says 100 Cities Training, and I'm like, oh, this must be the thing he was talking about. And so I click it and I watch it, and as I'm watching it, I just was so moved, like really deeply by it, because so many of the things that he was talking about were things that I was like wanting, but I didn't know how to get there. Like deep community and fellowship, the importance of communion, just several things that were like hitting like everything that God had been kind of putting on my heart over the past 6 months to a year, where it's like I want more, but I don't know how to get there. I sort of was plateauing in my faith, because I just didn't know where to go. Like I couldn't go up anymore, and like everything that I was wanting and desiring, it was like he was talking about every single one, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to try this. Like I remember like feeling the presence of God, and I was crying. I was like, because it was so in line with like everything. I was like, oh my gosh. And Francis had done a series on communion like just several weeks before, which for me was life-changing in some ways. It was so deeply impactful, so it was like it became so important to me that I was like, I want to do this. And then he's talking about that, and he's talking about community, because at the time we started going to a church consistently, but it was like in and then out, and not any real deep relationships with people. And I don't want to say I was like better than other Christians, but it was like I don't know, I was at a point where it was like my faith was more mature than a lot of people around me, and so it was like I was one of the most mature, and I'm not being like, oh, look at me. It was like, just totally grace of God that he like taught me so much. And I think I've been mature from a young age just because of my background and the things that I've experienced growing up. Because like when I tell my testimony, a lot of times people are like, I would have never thought that. Like, I mean, all the crazy stuff that's happened in my life, but I think that has matured me, or I've had to grow up in a lot of ways. I was just in a different place than a lot of people around me, and which was causing me to plateau and not grow in my faith. And so like when this opportunity came up, I was like, I have to at least try, like see what happens, because it was like come out for a year to California, and I was like, I'm taking a year off for school, so let's just like, I'm not doing anything for the next year, so what's the worst that can happen, right? And so I sign up, and this was in June. It was kind of crazy, the timeline. So the conference was at the end of May or mid-May. I sign up for it like last week of May, beginning of June. It takes like a couple weeks to process, because there's like a very intensive like interview process. Like my friend now Troy, he interviewed me, and I had another interview with another guy, and it was, you had to answer all these questions and a bunch of different things. But it was like a miracle I got in, because I think over 50 people applied and only 9 got accepted, and I was out of everyone that applied, I was the youngest, and I was the least qualified because they wanted you to have done some sort of like discipleship training school. So, you know, YWAM or, you know, that's Youth with a Mission or like missionary organizations. But I had never done that. I was like fresh out of high school, basically no experience. I mean, I'd gone on some mission trips, but like it was very organized, very structured, and so I was like, I was the least qualified, but they got me in. They accepted me, which was total miracle, I think. But the thing was, I found out this was like the second week of June, and the training started in July. So
Nice.
I had less than a month
Yeah.
to get
That's how it
$3,000 and get ready to move out to San Francisco. And I was at this place where it was like literally I couldn't, even if I worked every single day, I didn't have the money saved, and I wouldn't have had enough. And so I was just like, God, I was like, I had to have faith, because I was just saying, God, if you want this to happen, you're the only one who can make this happen, literally, because I can't do anything to make this happen. Even if I worked every single day, like all day, wouldn't have enough money.
Yeah.
And so we like did some brainstorming, and we did sort of like a GoFundMe to get me sent out, and I got all of the money in a week, which
Wow.
$3,000 in a week.
Let's go.
And that was just from like saying, hey, I'm moving out to San Francisco, would you consider supporting me? And I got it all. And it was crazy because I got over half of my money I got from the church that I had gone to youth group for many years, but I was never committed. Like, you know, I was never a member. I was never there on Sunday mornings. And they gave me over half of my budget. Like,
That's amazing.
That's
are you
awesome.
kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, actually, I think it was about $2,500, but I was raising $3,000 for like extras.
Yeah.
I was like, I got it all in a week, and then I moved out to California, which was crazy because I remember thinking to myself, I remember saying to myself specifically, I'm never gonna move to California. I remember saying that to myself, like at least a year or two before that. And I never envisioned myself being in ministry, and now I'm going out to California for ministry.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Let's go.
That's crazy. God will take whatever you say that you're never gonna do, and he's be like, no, you're gonna do that.
It's amazing the obedience you showed throughout this.
Well, it was
That's
like
inspiring.
God so blessed it, like just he made it happen, and he worked it out, and so grateful for it. And I was worried because I had never lived out of the house for longer than like a week or two. And so now I was moving like to California, which is several states away. But it, like, the transition was so easy. Like, definitely God was on it. Like, yeah, because I was very much growing up, like, got homesick easily, and so the fact that it was such a smooth transition was crazy. And then we did this 100 Cities training program for 2 months, and it was awesome, and I met so many amazing people, and it was such a beautiful experience. I started evangelizing for the first time like ever in my life, like sharing Jesus with people who weren't Christians, and like made lifelong friends there for sure, which was amazing. And we were all like living in the same apartment complex, and you know, so it's like you want to go talk to someone else, you just walk a little bit down and they're right there. And yeah, such a sweet time. And I grew, that was probably the most I have grown in my Christian walk. up to this point. And I felt like everything that I knew about God, it wasn't bad, but it felt like it was being torn down but being rebuilt into a better thing, like seeing God in a new way, in a better way, and seeing him like as a father, as like just as this loving God. And it's like, you know, I knew that, but it became real to me in that time. I remember at the end of the training, I very distinctly remember, because we were on the second floor, and I'm walking down the stairs, and I'm like carrying a bunch of stuff, and there's this song that I had just found, and it's called Good and Loved, and it's from the perspective of God, and it's him saying like, I am good and you are loved, and you know, it was a great song. But I remember I got to the bottom of the stairs and I was thinking about that song. I was singing to myself, and I was like, this is the first time in my life where I can genuinely say that I believe that you are good and that I am loved, like genuinely, without any sort of like, well, because you know, a lot of times we say we believe it, but a lot of times there's like that little bit of doubt or that little bit of questioning. But it was like wholeheartedly, I was like, God, you are good and I'm loved by you. And that was the first time in my life that I could say that and believe it, like actually believe it. And so yeah, just a beautiful experience and amazing time. And I decided to stay in San Francisco with some guys from the cohort, and we lived together for a while. So the program was 2 months. It was July and August. At the end of August, I moved in with these other guys and started looking for a job. And it was hard because it was sort of like, come out for a year, see what happens. But like, we didn't really know what we were doing. Yeah. There wasn't really a plan. And everything was very structured. It was like 50 hours a week. Every hour is planned out. You're doing something. So it went from that to the complete opposite of, you know, now you're living with these guys that you just met and you're not with the ministry anymore. You're just sort of there. So it's like one extreme to the other extreme. Yeah. And I definitely crashed hard in that season, where it was like, it was on this high and then just came down. But God was working in that. And I remember one quick testimony was, I was looking for a job, and with my lifeguard experience, and like, mind you, two of my other roommates, or at least one of them, were looking for a job. We're having lots of trouble finding a job, like application after application, not getting anything back. And I was looking online, and they messaged me, and this company messaged me, and like, hey, we saw your profile, we'd be interested in getting a review or interview with you. And I was like, okay. And it was a swim school, and so, you know, as with my lifeguard background, it seemed to fit. So I went in for an interview, but the person who was supposed to interview me had called in sick that morning, so they weren't there. And the way that it worked is they had just regular interview, and then you went in the water for 30 minutes and did a class with them just to see what it's like, how it feels. And so then it's like, okay, can we push it back 30 minutes and we'll figure it out? I was like, okay. And so I go out for a little bit, and there was a store nearby. I walked around, I come back in, and there's a guy with the logo on his sweatshirt. So I started talking to him, and I'm like, yeah, I'm supposed to have an interview. And he's like, oh, I could interview you right now. I was like, okay. And then we start talking, and it's the owner of the company. And he's there. He lives in Kentucky, but he was there for just like the week.
Wow.
And he starts talking to me, and he's like, asking me, why are you here? And I'm telling him about the program and Francis Chan. He's like, I love Francis Chan. Like, what?
That's crazy.
And he's a Christian.
Yeah.
Like, he loves Jesus. And he said to me, he's like, besides teaching kids how to swim, I think one of the greatest privileges in life is to teach people about Jesus. And I'm
Let's
like,
go.
Wow.
what? This is crazy.
Yeah.
This guy who's not like, he's only in for the week is here, and he's doing the interview. And then after I talk with him, they have me get in the water, and when I'm done in the water, I get out and he's gone, and I never see him again. Never saw him
Whoa.
again. And then several months later, like, he sold the company, and so, like, yeah, the only time I saw him was when I came in for my interview. But I got the job the next day because I left a good impression on the guy. Yeah, it was. But, like, my roommates were saying, I've never seen someone get a job that fast, ever, period. But it was like, people around me are looking for jobs and can't get it, and I get this so fast. Like, again, favor of God just on my life. So thankful for it. But yeah, so I'm there for most of 2020, for the rest of 2022. Towards the end of 2022, we moved into San Francisco because we had been living about 30 minutes south of San Francisco. Me and my roommates, we decided to move to San Francisco in November, and then we're there. And it was a hard season because, I mean, I'm working, but besides my roommates, we didn't have any friends. And we were trying to build community, and it was non-existent. And it was really hard, because it's like, we knew some people, and we'd be like, hey, you want to, like, do this? No responses. And it was happening over and over again. So it was really discouraging. But then, 2023 happens, and I start going to a church consistently, and it's like, okay, gonna start doing that, house church. And I'm doing that for a while, and I'm still in that church now. We are church. I don't know if you can see, represent. But yeah, so I start meeting with them, and it's amazing. And so at this point, I had not distanced myself, but I wasn't involved with Crazy Love at all. But I had been wanting to do an internship, and I had asked before, like in December or November, and they'd be like, yeah, like, we'll see, I'll ask, and then never heard back. And so I was like, okay, well, it's probably not going to happen. And then in January, I have a dream where, because I'd been praying, I was like, God, like, please make it work out, but it just wasn't happening, so I kind of gave up on it. But then in the middle of January, I have a dream, and at this point, so I had never been a dreamer growing up, like never had dreams, but then during the 100 Cities training, everyone in the cohort started having dreams. Like, it was crazy. Like most of the people had never had dreams before, and there's like 8-9 of us, and most of us start like having dreams every night, and it's like,
wow,
that's cool.
This is weird, but it was like definitely from God. But so I it was on and off for me, but I had this dream this one night where I'm in this van with Francis Chan, who's the head of the ministry, and we're driving, and it's like going all over the place, and we pull over, and we get out, and I look at him, and I'm like, do you think there's an opportunity to intern with Crazy Love? And he gets this look on his face, and he's thinking, he's like, and he starts to nod his head, and then I wake up. And I'm like, what? That's weird. Yeah, I was like, that's weird. So then I reach out the next week to them, and they're like, oh, actually, we were just talking earlier this week about having an intern. Like, we need an intern. I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what? So again, like, God's timing. And so I started working for them in February. of 2023, like almost a year ago now. And it was awesome. I worked with them for a while, and 2023, there was a lot of stuff that happened in 2023, but I did a lot of traveling throughout the year, but we went to this conference in Phoenix, and at this point, I'd been doing my swimming job for a while, and I was kind of on the fence because I was like, maybe I should just go full time with Crazy Love. Mind you, I wasn't getting paid with them. It was just internship. And so, but I was like, I don't know. And I'm just kind of thinking that going into this conference, but no decision. And the first night, there's this girl that comes up to me in the middle of prayer, and she's like, the Lord says it's okay to quit your job. I will provide for you. And I hadn't told anyone. Yeah. I hadn't told anyone that I was thinking about quitting my job. I didn't even tell the people I was going with.
Did you even pray about it?
No, well, not up to that point. I mean, I kind of had. I was like, not really, honestly. I didn't really pray like, God, show this to me. But it was like just a thought that I had. Exactly. I was like, should I, I don't know, maybe. And then this girl who doesn't know me comes up and says that. I'm like, what? And she left, and then she came back to me later to give me more or something. But then she said, I keep getting the same thing. It's okay to quit your job. The Lord will provide. And it's like, wow. Okay, that's a pretty clear. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. Yeah. And so then I start praying about it because I don't want to just go based off of this random girl that said something, even though it's crazy that she said that. But it's I don't want to go off of that one thing. Yeah. But I just felt so much peace about it. I was like, I'm not gonna get paid if I leave this, and I'm living in one of the most expensive cities in America. This is everything would be don't do that. And even when I told my boss with Crazy Love, they're like, okay, are you sure though? Just want to make sure, because in our wisdom, it's that makes no sense. Yeah. But I did it, and the day that I turned in my 2-week notice, I came home, and there was a letter for me, and I never had gotten letters. I hadn't said anything to anyone. I don't think I even told my parents at this point. But I open it, and it's a card from my grandma, and I open it up, and she just said, just thinking about you and praying for you, and gave me Joshua 1:9, where it's be strong and courageous, do not be terrified, and a check for $100. And it's what? Are you kidding me?
That is crazy.
The day, out of every day it could have been, the day that I quit, or put in my 2-week notice, be strong and courageous, do not be terrified, and a check for $100. So it's I was just man, God, okay, you're going to provide. You're going to provide. I trust you. And God has definitely provided. And then, let's see, a few months ago, around September, they officially hired me for the team. Nice. Yes, sir. I'm on the team, and I love my job. I'm so thankful because so many people can't say that, where it's I love my job, but I seriously feel I have the best job, and getting to work for a ministry and Francis Chan's ministry, something that I grew up on and loved, and his videos were so deeply impactful in my walk. And now it's I'm working for that, and I'm helping make that content for other people because I'm on the content team, and it's just this awesome moment. Wow,
Let's
God,
go.
this is amazing. And
let's go.
As I've worked with the team and the content team, I've grown this love for making content and doing video stuff, and so getting the opportunity to do the podcast has been awesome. because it's just another opportunity that like God's definitely put it on my heart to do more of this video stuff, and now I get to do it, and I get to try it, and not just with Crazy Love, but with other things too, like test that creativity and yeah, and so blessed by that, and it's been just an amazing journey with that, and I want to say a few more things about this year. I know we're going for a while, but just want to share a few more things. But so in this past summer, another kind of crazy thing that happened. I got invited to go to Hawaii for a conference, or not a conference, sorry, a retreat, and it was crazy because I wasn't supposed to go, but like last minute it came together, and I literally had decided, okay, I'm not gonna go because I'd already traveled a bunch, and so I was sort of like with Crazy Love, they were like you shouldn't be traveling more. I was like, okay, I'm just not gonna go. But then the night that I was like, I'm not gonna go, I had 2 dreams about Hawaii. And one of them, I was driving a car and I was supposed to turn in somewhere, but I missed the turn. But as I'm going, there's like one spot where you can do a U-E, and after that it was like you can't turn around, and so I took the U-E and then I went to where I was supposed to go. But it was like because I had to me it felt like I had decided I'm not going to go, and that was like the turn that I missed, but God was giving me another chance, like, hey, like you can turn around, you can still do this. And so I was like, so I told my boss, who, it's funny because my boss is also my pastor, which is very interesting. He's like the pastor of my house church, which I love it. I think it's awesome, but it's weird sometimes. But I told him, I was like, you know, I don't know what this is, but like there's been all these confirmations, and there were several other confirmations besides the dreams. Like Hawaii had come up basically every single day for the 2 months leading up to that without me, like I would see like something to do with Hawaii, or someone would talk about Hawaii, or like every day where I wasn't even bringing it up, but it would just come up every single day. And so then I was like, you know, I don't know what this is, but I really feel really strong I'm supposed to go. And so he's like, okay, like you can go. And so I go, and it's an amazing, amazing time. I experienced God in one of the most tangible ways that I ever have in my life. Like the encounters that I had with God were so insane. It was just on a whole nother level than I had ever experienced before.
What were you guys doing that like made that so tangible? Was it like prayer, or what was it?
Well, I think God definitely was like just blessing the trip.
Cool.
And it was like a group of people from all around, but they were all just super fiery, like, you know, wanting to devote their lives to the Lord, basically. And like we did a lot of prayer, we did a lot of worship and community, getting in the Word, things like that. And it was really just a retreat to just get away and rest and get, you know, vision or inspiration for what God wants to do. And so, yeah, we got to go, and it was awesome. And I experienced God like in so many ways, like probably one of the most powerful encounters that I've ever had with God. I had at least 2 there.
Wow.
And it was like for 5 days. So
it
was very condensed amount of time, but unfortunately the second to last day, I believe, we had gotten back from prayer, like all night prayer session, and it was awesome. It was like 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. or something. I went home a little bit early because I was so tired. I was like, I can't make it. And so I go back, and we were in a big house where everyone was staying together, but I decided to take a shower, and like one of the guys let me use his bathroom and take a shower, and then when I get out, I find there's a phone that has been recording me while taking a shower.
What?
And I
What?
I go and grab it because I see just the reflection, because it's like in a closet across from me, and I just see the reflection. I'm like, what is that? And I walk over to it, and as I'm walking over, I'm just like, I'm like realizing what it is, but I'm like, no, like, you know, I'm just like, please don't let it be what I think it is. And I pick it up, and it's a phone recording me. I'm like, what the frick? That's crazy.
So-
You know,
That's
total shock, not expecting it at all. But basically, the guy who let me use his bathroom to take a shower, who was the male leader of the trip, had gone in before and had like planted his phone and said he was cleaning the bathroom. And so I'm in total shock because it's the last person you would expect, and he seemed like, you know, like heard his stories, saw just all this great, he seemed like such a great guy. And then for him to turn around and do this, it's like, what?
Yeah, this is creepy. Like,
Yeah, like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, just in total shock. And mind you, everyone is either still at the prayer room or asleep because it's like we've been up all night. So it's literally just me and him. And it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't just let this happen. Like, I can't just like let it act like nothing happened. Like, that definitely can't happen. And so I end up, like, I take the phone with me, I walk back out, and I'm like getting my stuff, and he's eating breakfast, and he like doesn't say anything, but he walks out and he starts walking back to his room to get the phone, and I stop him and I give him the phone, and I'm like, you know, hey, I don't even remember what I said. It was such a blur, but
I can't imagine.
But I basically confronted him,
Yeah.
and it was just a crazy experience. But in the moment, because God had been working so much in the following, or the 3-4 days leading up to it, and you know, I look back on it now, and it was totally like, was it God's will? Like, did he make this happen? No, he didn't. But I believe he knew it was going to happen, and he was preparing me for that moment. But in the moment, you know, there's so many emotions, you're in shock, but there was this verse that I was repeating over and over in my head in Hebrews 12, where it talks about, let no root of bitterness take hold, for by it many become defiled. And it just kept, as we're talking, and you know, he's sharing just, you know, like his like struggles, and he's like, so apologize, you know, all the stuff. But it just is repeating over and over and over in my head, and I'm like, God, you're asking me to forgive him, but I don't know if I can right now, because I mean, what he did was just unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like, wicked. But he was about to leave to go talk to the female leader about what had happened, because we had tried to call her. She wasn't responding because she was still at the prayer room. And so before he's starting to leave, I'm like, wait, I need to say something to you. And it was like in my heart, I was like, I don't want to do this. And I don't even know if I can forgive you. Like, I'm thinking this to myself, but I'm gonna say it in faith that God's gonna meet me there. And so I'm like, hey, wait, what happened isn't okay, but I do want to say, like, I forgive you. And it was such a powerful moment, and something that my dad, the one who adopted me, every time that we would argue, we'd always end it in a hug. And so I felt like I was supposed to do that. And I was like, honestly, that was harder than saying the words to, like, come into physical contact with him. But, like, I felt like I was supposed to. And honestly, probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life. But in that moment, I was just like, I'm going to be obedient. And I hugged him, and
what was his response to that?
he said, don't you want to hit me? And I said,
What?
well, because you know what he's done. And he's like, don't you want to hit me?
Yeah.
Like, aren't you angry at me? And I said, well, God is the judge. God's the one who punishes. I'm not supposed to do that. That's God's job. And I'm called to turn the other cheek. And that was really hard.
He felt so.
that's
he
worse
felt
than
so guilty after that. I know he probably just felt so dumb.
Yeah. Well.
That's tough.
Yeah. That's
true.
Yeah. That's not my job to make him feel that way. But that was just instantly. That scripture came to mind. And yeah. And then he left, and I'm by myself because everyone's asleep, and it's like, I'm just sitting here, I'm processing this. It's like, what the heck? And yeah, so I called, I didn't tell my parents immediately, but I called my roommates at the time, and was just like, hey, this just happened, it's crazy, but can you just pray for me? Because I don't know what to do. Kind of lost for words. And yeah, so got some people to pray for me, and it was beautiful because it was a crazy experience just because he was gonna leave, but then he came back and confessed to the entire group, which was 15, 20 people, said what he did, and and I felt in that moment, I can't remember exactly, but there's a verse in, I believe, 2 Corinthians 3 or 4, which talks about how God has given us the ministry of reconciliation, and I felt that really heavily as they were sharing, because he was sharing and the female leader was sharing, and both just saying areas where they slipped up or messed up, and the female leader didn't do anything, but she was just talking about in other areas with like finances where she wasn't totally transparent. Yeah, they shared, and then when they were done sharing, I was just like, hey, I want to read this verse about God has given us the ministry of reconciliation, and it talks about pray for your enemies, and I just prayed for them. It was a really powerful moment, and everyone in the room was just moved, the Holy Spirit was just there. It was crazy, and it went on for 3 hours. And so it was just a wild day, a wild night.
Mm-hmm.
But so everyone there was so like supportive, and so many people prayed for me, and
That's awesome.
yeah, it was definitely really hard, but like the love that I felt from the community there was it was beautiful, and I was so thankful for it. But wild thing, and I'm processing it, and it's the last day now, and yeah, lots of people praying for me, and then they prayed for us as we went out and as I went out, and yeah, it was a sweet time. But I remember getting back home, and up to this point it was sort of like a blur, everything that was going on. But I remember I got home, and we were like flying through the night. It was a red eye. I got home, and I just like was so tired. No one was home either. Like my roommates were out of town, and I just like collapsed on my bed, and I was just like crying, and it was just, yeah, it was a lot, because everything just sort of hit me.
Yeah, the reality.
Right, like because it was like go 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 go, and then you get home and you just, it's like slow down, like that release. But I will say, I honestly, like honest to God, it's weird to say, but I'm thankful for it. It's been hard, but God has taught me so much in the process, and like, yeah, so much good has come out of it, out of this terrible situation, and like, it's just been beautiful. And I remember there were times where, because my roommates were out for the whole week, so I had that whole first week I was by myself. Still didn't really have a lot of friends at this point. I had some, but it was just weird, because I was home alone, and I was like kind of working, and my pastor knew, but he was like the only one that knew. But I remember there were times where it's like, God, I have nothing, like I can't pray, I can't read my Bible, but when I tell you it, like there's times where it's like, yes, I've experienced the presence of God, and like it's like I feel him. But it was genuinely, the best way I could describe it, it was like Jesus was in the room with me, where I had never experienced that. But it was like in the moment where it's like I have nothing to give. There's nothing I can do, because a lot of times within Christian culture it's all about like do this stuff, and it's unconscious a lot of times, like we don't realize we're doing it, but like doing this stuff to get affection from God, to get favor from God, to get whatever. But it's like, God, I have nothing to give you, and I felt him so tangibly. Like it was like he was literally in the room with me.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the best way I can describe it. It was really beautiful. But yeah, just a wild time. And that was summer of 2023, so last year. Yeah, and then after that, it was just crazy, because then like God put so many people in my life who, they reached out, they were calling me, talking to me, and I was so thankful for the community, so thankful for people who were reaching out, talking to me. And then in that time, more community started forming for me, started having consistent friends, and it was amazing. And then in September, this guy came in. His name is Luke. You know him. Shout out to Luke if you're watching. This random guy from Northern Ireland. He came in, and he was here for 3 months to be on an internship with Crazy Love, and we started a a worship night at our house once a month, and it just slowly grew into more. And then he left and sort of handed it off to me. He's like, all right, I'm leaving, it's for you. And it's kind of formed into this cool like community group. I could go in deep on it, but I think for sake of time, you know, we started this United Space, and you
Let's
know
go.
That's
Yeah.
what you guys have been getting connected to. But really, it's just a place to build community for believers or non-believers, and worship Jesus and like help people in their walk with God. That's really the goal of it. And so yeah, we started that in October. Luke was here for the first two, and then he left, and and then I sort of carried it on, and we've been doing it now for the past 5 months, I think, which is crazy.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is gonna be the 5th month.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time's
Right.
flying, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But then also in September, I met you guys, and I know you shared a little
highlight
bit.
of your
That was
year.
the highlights. Got it. Yeah, but yeah, I met you guys at the Encountering God conference, and I mentioned before, I almost didn't go, but then ended up sitting right next to you guys, and I got connected to Keegan, and we just got in touch and got to know each other more, and yeah, it was just awesome. And then we were doing these Bible studies at my friend's house. So my roommates at the time, they both moved out at the same time, and then that's when Luke came in. So we were roommates for a while, but right when one of them went to Berkeley, which is just across the bay, and he was doing a Bible study every Monday, and it was great. But one of the times we were talking about discipleship, and my friend Troy, who's leading it, like loves discipleship. It's like his thing, you know, it's his jam. And so we were talking about discipleship, and I don't remember if it was something I was asking myself or sort of a prompt, but it was like, who are people in your life that you could be discipling? And I was thinking about it, and you two instantly came to mind. Because it was like, even though I had just met
You're
you,
so special.
but I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, these guys are new believers, they're new to the city. And I was thinking, what is stopping me from discipling them? Because I really have a heart for discipleship. I think it's so important, and I think it's kind of a lost discipline in the church, discipleship. And so, but I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, currently the only thing that is preventing it from happening is me, like not asking. So why would I get in the way? Like, like I have the time, I have the energy, and I was able to get in touch with you guys. So it was like literally the only thing stopping it from happening is me right now. So why would I do that? So let's just reach out, see what happens. And then we met up, and we've been walking it out now the past few months, and you guys have been with United Space, and it's been such an awesome time.
For sure.
You know, like so blessed with my life. So.
I don't want to just skip over United Space. I feel like
Yeah.
you made it seem like it was like kind of a simple thing. United Space is amazing. Like honestly, like I'm so happy that you helped create it, because as someone that was so new to Christianity, it helped me learn a lot about Christianity, learn a lot about myself, and like you said, build a sense of community in a city where I knew nobody. So
yep, that was the whole goal.
It's amazing.
Is exactly what you said. So, you know, that's a good day in my mind if that happens. But yeah, it was awesome. And you know, I think back on all the people in my life who've looked at me and believed in me, because I didn't believe in myself growing up. I didn't believe. There's still times where I don't believe in myself, and like with God, it's not like we're supposed to put hope in ourselves. We're supposed to put our hope in God, but like God works through people, right? But it was like I never felt capable of like being in that place where I can do something like that, where I can lead, where I'm like discipling people, and it's blessing me, it's blessing other people. And like I just like I look at my life and I'm so thankful like that God looked at me, waited for so long, waited for 15 years, and in his mercy, there were so many people that they heard the same thing as me. They experienced the same things as me. We went to the same youth group, had the same leaders, but yet they walked away and I'm still here. And it's like, why? Why did you choose me? But God just in his mercy was like, no, I want him, the one who doesn't believe in himself, the one who's addicted to porn, the one who lies all the time, the one who has social anxiety and is petrified of public speaking. Like, I'm gonna choose him. I chose him before the foundation of the world, and I'm gonna use him. Like, there were people who heard the same things, experienced the same things, people who could speak much better than me, who prayed much better than me, because it was like, I'm not that disciplined. Like, there were people who were more disciplined, who prayed more, who read their Bible more, but they walked away. And it's like, I'm here, and that's nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with myself, because statistically, I shouldn't be where I'm at. I mean, like, the statistics with kids who grew up in fatherless homes, I mean, it's astounding, some of the things where like so many end up in prison, addicted to drugs, homeless. Like, the fact that I'm the exception, such a blessing. Like, just purely the mercy of God. And like also the fact first of all, that's crazy to think about. Like, the God of the universe looked at me and he's like, I believe in him. He can be something great. And not in the sense of like, I'm going to do all these great things, but it's like, I want him to be my son, right? Like, him and like these other people who are more talented than me, have more experience than me. It's like, nope, I'm going to use him. It's like, what? To do something like United Space, like, never thought that would happen. And not only the God of the universe, but for people, like, there's been several people throughout my life who have looked at me when I don't believe in myself, and they believe in me and they invest into me and have brought me to this place where I'm at now, like, have walked with me, like Luke, you know, he looked at me, he believed in me. Troy, my roommate, Lucky, my other roommate, like, they looked at me, they believed in me, and they walked with me, are walking with me. My pastor, like, these people in my life, there's so many that I could name, but my youth pastor from, you know, Kansas, like, he believed in me. Like God used those people. And, you know, I've been meditating on the passage in Hebrews 12 where it's like, fix your eyes on Jesus, but it says he's the author and the finisher, or the perfecter of our faith. And it's just like, man, God, you wrote this thing, you started it, and you're gonna finish it. You're gonna perfect me in the process. And there's times where it's like, I am messing up so bad. I have no idea what I'm doing half the time, like with United Space or like with discipling you guys. It's like I have no idea what I'm doing half the time, but God is like, I've got you. I started this in you. I'm gonna perfect this in you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's no other response than just to worship him, you know, just be like, God, thank you, God, that you chose me, that you have called me as your son. You've called me into these things, and yeah, there's so many things that God has put on my heart that I want to do, and I feel like will happen. But it's just that process of trusting him, believing in him, and you know, I know I've seen his mercy. I've seen his favor on my life. Like, I've had so much favor, guys, and I don't know why, but God just decided, and I'm just like, God, thank you. Like, would you give that to other people? Would you grant that? And so I'm just so thankful, you know, for United Space, like for that to be something where it's like impacting people and God is using it. It's like, wow, what a blessing that God is using something that I had a part in to touch other people, bless other people. Like, it's amazing. And so, yeah, that's my spiel. But so thankful for God. So good.
And we are thankful for you, brother. You have definitely changed my life. I'm assuming you've changed Keegan's life. And thank you for being so thorough and so detailed with your testimony.
Felt like I was a little too thorough.
There's no such thing.
Okay.
I will say, I think the individuality of God's pursuit is so important. And I think that throughout your testimony, like, the clearest thing that, like, what kept happening is a lot of times you mentioned that you experienced God in a way that you never have before. And it was like, it happened when you were young. It happened as you grew older. And as you grew older, different experiences that helped you experience God in a new way. And it got me to thinking, like, the importance of God's pursuit of each individual. And
Yes.
like, for those of you sitting at home, like, if you're listening to this part, like, God is pursuing you right now. He's looking for your heart right now. And so he's been knocking. He is knocking. It's just on you to answer the call now. I just wanted to say that because I think it's like so, like, from before when you didn't have God in your life and then you experience God's presence. Like, you knew of God. Everyone knows of, if you ask anyone, they know Jesus died on the cross. But you experienced him, and then in your pursuit of him, in his pursuit of you, further along the line you experienced it again and then again and then again. So it's just like, I think that's really powerful and important. But like Matt was saying, like, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Yeah.
I've been watching from behind the
I know,
camera.
yeah,
Now I
I
get
know,
to be
so-
on it.
yeah, I know. Now he's
Thank
gonna
you
ask-
for being so helpful in the podcast
Yeah,
as well.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah. So I think first, let me say, for those of you watching, Ethan does an amazing job helping out with our podcast, and he also is working right now. But even still, I think that from our perspective, we'd love to support him in all of his adventures and whatever different things he has coming up. And it would be very helpful if you could go in the comments, and in the bio there will be a section where you can donate to help support him, because it's very expensive to live out here, and he's not working for a lot of money. He's doing it out of the goodwill of his heart, and God's placed that on his heart. So we want to support him however we can, and so check out that link in the bio. And then this is kind of weird because normally you ask the question,
Sure.
but Ethan, what is something that you would want to tell the audience if you had the chance?
What would I like to say? I will say that the Lord, in his kindness, pursues us, and he's running after us. But there is also, there's a command to not be passive about it, but to be active in it, and not only have him pursue you, but you pursue him. And it says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And like that Hebrews 12 passage, I love it so much, where it says, fix your eyes on Jesus. Lay aside every weight and sin which entangles so easily, and let us run the race with endurance. There's a race that's been set out for us. There's a race that's been set out for you by God. You can choose to be on the track. You can choose your pace, but run the race with him. You know, don't waste your life. Like, now is the time. Now is the time to run with him and to pursue him and fix your eyes on him, and to run the race with endurance, and to not just get to the end of your life and look back on it with regret, look back on it where you're just like crawling over the finish line, but run it well, run it with endurance. And God is gonna show up like he has in my life. Not because we do things, but because he loves us. And when we look at him, there is blessing in it. And we live a fulfilled life in him.
Thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Yes.
And this was amazing.
Woo! That was good.